Hello and welcome to day 4. Today you'll be learning chess notation. Now, chess notation is something that is very important to learn because it allows you to know what is happening at the board. So let's get right into it. So as I clear the board, you should notice by now that the chessboard is, 8 by 8. So that means there are 64 squares in total. So if we go up and down, this would be called files. And if we go, horizontally, this would be called ranks. So remember that files are up and down vertically, and rows are left to right horizontally. So let's talk about files first. As you can notice, if you look at the very bottom, you can notice that there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H files. Because this is the A file, this is the B file, C file, D file, E file, F file, G file, and H file. Now for the ranks, this would be, if you guys can see, like here, this would be the first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank, fifth rank, sixth rank, seventh rank, and eighth rank. So that's basically how, the files and ranks work. For files, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And um, for the ranks, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, what happens if I flip the board? Because this is very interesting. Now we're looking at Black's perspective. So everything is reversed. This is no longer A, B, C, D. This is now H, G, F, E. This is no longer 1, 2, 3, 4. This is now 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So remember, in White's perspective, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H for the files, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the ranks. And as I flip it, it would be H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A for the files, and 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in the ranks. This is really important, especially if you're playing as Black, because this is something that could be very tricky for you. Anyways, let's flip back to White's perspective. So I'm just gonna put a couple, so I'm just gonna click a random square. In this case, this would be the D5 square. And the reason being is that it's on the D file and it's on the 5th rank. So this would be D5. So remember the formula of which square is which is the file name and the rank it is in. So this would be E4, this would be B7, it's in the B file 7th rank. This would be H8 because it's on the H file and 8th rank. And this takes time to practice, so make sure you practice enough that you can clearly understand it. I'm just going to do one more example. This would be B3. It's on the B file and the 3rd rank. All right, so let's just flip to Black's perspective for some more training. So remember, everything is reversed. This would be F5. It's in the F file for Black and the 5th rank. And this would be A1 because it is on the A file and the 1st rank. So let's flip back to White's perspective. Anyways, let's just put a couple pieces there because for demonstration purposes. Anyways, you guys should know that there are 6 pieces in chess. And each piece has a specific label to them on chess notation. Well, in chess notation. So, the pawn, this would be A4, the square. But the problem is, this pawn has no label. It's just only the square. Anyways, the bishop, its label is B. The knight would be labeled as N. The rook would be labeled as R. the queen would be labeled as Q, and the king would be labeled as K. So let's just do a couple moves. So this would be A4. We've already seen that earlier. This would be BG4. Well, in chess notation, this would be bishop G4. And the reason why it's BG4 in chess notation is because the bishop moved, and it moved to the G4 square. So always remember that in chess notation, it's normally the label of the piece first, and then the square. Anyways, let's go back. This is knight f3, or nf3 in chess notation. The reason why? It's on the f3 square, and the label is n. Now let's go to here. This would be RB8 because it's on the B8 square, and the labels are. This would be QH6 in chess notation, or Queen H6. The reason why it's QH6 because this queen is labeled as Q and it's on H6. And for the king, this king moved to G2, and the reason why is, the king's label is K, and it moved to the G2 square. Um, I had a problem with this, but do not mix these two up. Remember that the king's label is K, and the knight's label is N. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Now let's talk about checks and checkmate. So, let's just say that it is white to move. So, what is the difference between a check and checkmate, and how do we label it in chess notation? So, this is Queen f7, and it's a check because it's attacking the kings. If you hadn't seen if you hadn't seen the rules of chess, please go to the rules of chess. I have a video on the top right to in case. So if so this would be QF7 because the queen is labeled Q. It's on F7. Remember the F7 square, and it's in check. So what we would do when the king is in check is put a plus sign at the end. So this black king goes to H8. So this wouldn't be in chess notation K H8, and this is checkmate. And remember, if you don't know what checkmate is, please look at my third video, the rules of chess. So when it's a checkmate, we would put a hashtag symbol at the end. So this would be QF8 hashtag symbol in chess notation. So remember, this is Q. So remember, like in those two examples, this is QF7. Remember, and it's in check, so we put a plus sign at the end. This is QF8 because the queen moved to F8, and it's checkmate, so we put a hashtag symbol at the end. So yeah, that's pretty much it on checks and checkmate. So let's talk about special rules. So you probably know castling and en passant. Let's just talk about castling. Let me just enable castling for white and castling for black. And if you don't know what castling is, please look at my third video on the rules in chess again. So white castled here and black castled here. Oh my god, that was laggy. So right here, white castled kingside or a short castle. So in chess notation, we would call this 0-0 to symbolize that they castled kingside, like the person who's playing white castled kingside. So black does here. This would be 0-0-0, and the reason why is because black castled queenside, long castle. So remember the difference between kingside and kingside castle, queenside castle, long, short, whatever you call it. Oh wow, that's super laggy. Remember, this is 0-0. This is 0-0-0. And a good way to remember how many zeros you have would be the squares. Notice how this king-side castle has to like cross in 2 squares, while like this castle's like in 3 squares. So remember 0 dash 0, 0 dash 0 dash 0, and yeah, that's how castling works in chess. Now, let's talk about promotion. Obviously, you're not gonna get like this. This is just for purposes only. There's no way like eight pawns would like happen like this, but I'm just gonna show you for education purposes. So so let's talk about promotion. Let's say this pawn moves here. I promoted it to a queen. So in chess notation, we would call this d8. Remember that so it would be like a normal pawn move because pawns have no label. It's just only the square. So d8, right? The pawn moved here to d8, and for en passant, we will put equal sign and the label of which piece it promoted. So this would be d8 equals q. So if we go back, this would be a8 equals r because whoops, because like the a pawn on a7 moved to a8 and it promoted into a rook. So this would be a8 equals r. So let's go back. Let's say I do this, okay? This would be c8 equals b. And the reason why it's c8 equals b, because remember, the pawn moved to c8, we put an equal sign, and like the bishop's label is b, so it would be c8 equals b. So, and lastly, h8 to h8 equals n, because, it moved to h8, the pawn moved to h8, and the equal sign n for because it promoted into a knight. So that's how promotion works. It's like the pawn move, and you include the equal sign and the label on which piece the pawn promoted to. Anyways, let's go to the next one, which would be what happens when like two pieces can go into like the same square. For example, both of these knights can move to here, d5. So how do we in chess notation tell which piece to move? Since so what we would do is since both of them can move to the same square, what we would do is find like the ranks. So this knight is on the C file. This one is on the E file. I didn't know why I said rank earlier, so this would be NED5 in chess notation. And the reason why is, it's still an knight move because it's N, the label's N, it's on the D5 square. So we would put E in the middle of the label of the piece and the square. And the reason why is, it originally was in the E file. And since both pieces can move to like the D5 square, uh, we would put like the file on which like the piece originally came from. So this would be NED5. This would be if I go back, this would be NCD5. Same thing. This used to be on the C file. Both those pieces can go to this D5 square. So this would be NCD5 because the knight's label is N. It used to be on the C file and it's on the D5 square. Now what happens if let's just change pieces. Let's just say rook and rook. So both of these rooks can go to the F5 square. So how do we determine, because like they're on the same file. So how do we in chess notation describe which piece moved here? So as I do couple this, so this would be R6 F5. The reason why is it used to be on the sixth rank, right? The sixth rank. So we would put a 6 in between the label of the piece and n in between like the square. So this would be r r4 f5. The reason why it used to be on the fourth file. So this would be r4 f5 because remember that if two pieces are on the same file, just use the rows. So let's say this piece moved. This is on the 6th rank. Then it would be R6 F5 because it used to be on the 6th file. And if the piece moved, just like remember, oh, like this is on the 4th rank. So this would be R4 F5. And that's basically it. So let's talk about pawn captures because in fact we don't even need this. Let's just do a couple extremely random moves. Anyways, so what happens if both pawn? Well, basically, it doesn't matter what you take because they have like it's kind of like the same with like the two same pieces on the same square, except this is different. So let's talk about this. So this would be in chess notation cx d5 or c takes d5 because the pawn took on d5, right? And it is on the C file. I forgot to tell you about this, but remember when you're capturing something, you put an X between the piece name and the square. So, like for example, if I do this, this would be nxd5 because the knight took on d5. Um, the knight took on d5, and we put an X to symbolize that it captured. This would be another example of a capture. This would be queen takes d5, or in chess notation, qx d5. And the reason why is because the queen moved, it took on d5. So remember that in captures we would put an X in between the symbol of the piece and the square. Anyways, so this would be if we go back, this would be e takes d5 or ex d5 in chess notation. And the reason why is like this is on the C file, right? And this is on the E file. So what we would do is put what pawn's file is on. So like this is on the E file, so we would put E because it was on the E file, and X because it captured D5 on the square. And it doesn't matter if I go back, you still have to do EX D5 because it doesn't matter if there's like another pawn right here. You still have to do like EX D5. No, not like X D5 because that's how chess notation works. So remember, look for the file name. So this would be, in this case, E, X, because it took, and then the square. Let me just show you one more example, just to make sure. This would be E, because, the pawn's on, because the pawn used to be on the E file, and X, because it took a pawn in this example, and F6 because it's on the square. This would be G because it was originally on the G file, and X because it captured, and F6 because the square. And that's basically how pawn captures work. So let's do a typical match, but in chess notation. This would be E4 because no label, it's on the E4 square. C6, no label, remember, and it's on the C6 square. D4, same thing, no label, D4 square. D5, same thing, what I said. E takes D5 because it originally was on because the pawn took on, because it originally was on the E file and took on D5. C takes D5 because the pawn was originally on the C file and took on D5. So knight F3 or NF3 because This is on the f3 square. The label of this knight is n c6 because the knight's label is n, and it's on the c6 square. Bishop e5 or bb5 because the bishop's label is b. It's on the b5 square. A6, no label, just the square. ba4, the bishop moved to a4. Black does bishop d7 because the bishop moved to d7. White moves here. This would be in chess notation nbd7 because the knight moved to d2, and like the piece that moved here to the square is like the knight on the b file. So this would be nbt2. Black does something like this. This would be nf6 because the name of this knight is n, and it's on the f6 square. This would be 0-0 since it's castled kingside. This queen moved to b6, so this would be qb6 in chess notation. And yeah, that's basically it. This is how chess notation works. So you can click on this video to go to the next video, and you can click here to view the entire playlist, and I'll see you in the next video.